bring up the speakers, and can we get the first chart, please? So we're going to talk about data science, and we're going to go through 4 presentations quickly, and I promise you it will be quickly. And first we're going to start with Christina, who's going to provide some detail from LinkedIn about data science, how many there are, the trend, the growth. Then we're going to have a real-time example of what data science does. Then we'll have 2 presentations that talk more about the future of data science. So just to start us off, can I have the next chart, please? We've not had a clicker anymore. Okay, so just as a definition of data science, and one of the conversations we had on Monday is maybe the data scientist is a unicorn, because what we're talking about is a combination of IT, stats, and business knowledge. And so there are different definitions of data science, but I just put this one up, and the overlap of them being perhaps the data science as a way of providing some context for that. But with that, let me then turn over to Christina and give us some information from LinkedIn. And the clicker is actually here. Okay.
Can I get this? Oh, great. Perfect. Thank you, Mike. Can I... I'm going to have the same problem everyone else has had, which I'm going to click through my whole presentation in a minute. Great, so thank you for having me here. We wanted to start off this session understanding who are data scientists and what can we learn from the LinkedIn platform that can provide some insight into this. And if you think about LinkedIn, I'm sure we have many members here in the audience. Hopefully, many of you are members. We have nearly 350 million members around the globe. So we very simply looked at profiling people who had data science or data scientist as a job title on LinkedIn. So here are the 3 key takeaways. The first one is probably not too surprising to this group. Data science is a very new and fast-growing discipline. We actually saw the first data scientist job title emerge on LinkedIn only about 4 years ago. We also saw a 36% increase in the last 2 years in profiles of data science. And I think we've already heard at this ICOM conference how fast and emerging and changing data science is as a discipline. The second key takeaway was around skills. What skills do people have that define them as data scientists? And I'll come on in a minute and share a little bit about how that compares to some of the other research analytical disciplines that we have, and talk a little bit more about that in a second. And then lastly, we wanted to look at career paths. So we isolated senior data scientists. This is defined as those who are director plus. And we looked at where they came from. It was actually difficult to look where they're going because data scientists haven't gone very far yet. They're still all new and existing in where they are today. So we couldn't look at future career paths, so we wanted to look at where they came from to better define that. And we saw that most of them come from the research function, with some IT and engineering backgrounds, but they're very experienced. And so they're bringing this career expertise from research, from their other backgrounds, into data science as a discipline. Now let me back up for a second and explain how we define the data at LinkedIn. And I will use my esteemed panelist, Amit. Amit, thank you for being my model. I have a little bit of a confession to make that I'm an imposter on this panel, that I'm not a data scientist. Normally I would use my own profile. But we can tell from Amit's profile, he's a data scientist is the title. He comes from the marketing advertising industry. We can also see a lot about his education. We can see what jobs he's come from. What's his career path? Where has he worked? And we can look at skills. And so when we looked at this in aggregate, we got this type of audience profile for data scientists around the globe. I mentioned how fast and growing this discipline is. The majority are actually individual contributors, so we didn't have a lot of managers in this profile. They work very individually, and I think that probably makes sense. We saw a mix of the company size. Some come from small companies, some work at companies 5,000 plus. Almost half come from tech industry, and I think that also makes a lot of sense if you think about where a lot of the big data is coming from. Technology players, social media, digital, providing a lot of this data that we need to analyze. We saw that half are based in the US, and then you can see here some of the top universities where this talent is coming from, both within the US as well as internationally. So let's take a look at some of the skills. I thought this was quite interesting. Not surprising, data scientists are very technical, very analytical. But when you compare to a couple of other data titles, data analyst, market research, statistician, you start to see some commonalities. Data analysis sticks out in all four categories. I think what we can learn and what's important in this chart is we as an industry are still trying to define what data science is, and also how do we work together and get the best from all of these different disciplines. And I think if we think about talent, retaining talent, acquiring talent, looking for new graduates to come into our companies to work with us, this is a great insight to share as we think about that in the future. And then lastly, the career path information. So when we looked at those senior data scientists around the globe, so director plus job title, you can see again, 1 and 2 came from research. So research is really fueling a lot of the data scientists. But we also have engineering, IT, and some consultants in the mix. I mentioned the skills already, very technical, machine learning. We've heard a lot about this already, a bit about this throughout the conference. The educational background I thought was quite interesting, and this is similar to what we've seen in data scientists generally, a lot of computer science, mathematics, very advanced degrees in stats and science. Only 10% actually have an MBA. And then in terms of the median years of work experience, again, I mentioned we're not seeing people emerge straight from university and becoming a very senior data scientist. I think it probably can happen. But in general, we're seeing people come from other industries, and they have a lot of experience and other qualifications that they're bringing to the table. So in summary, I thought this was an interesting quote. Harvard Business Review commented that data science was the sexiest job title of the 21st century. I'm not sure that my analysis proved or disproved that. Maybe after this panel we can gauge if that's right. I see people nodding, yes. But hopefully looking at where we've come from and a little bit of the present will tell us about the future and where we're headed, and provided you with a few thought starters of this. And with that, I'll hand it back to the panelists to talk a bit more about the future. So thanks very much for having me today.
Okay. And now we're going to move to Kajal, who will give us a data scientist example, excuse me.
Actually, it may be a good idea that we don't use the slides, but can you hear me? And can you see me? Because most often, yeah, absolutely. I tell you what, it's often, and now, it's neither be heard nor be seen as a data scientist. So I think there is no further ado. I can probably speak for a good 6 minutes right here in these slides, and you probably don't need anything. But do you care? Probably we don't, because every day you go to your grocery, you find the finest apple, finest oranges. You try to make the best out of every cut. But have you wondered where that ecosystem started, or planting the seeds and who is picking up the fruits and getting it to deliver to your groceries, and so that you can pick it up? So what happened over the transformations with the data science is that we tried to lose sight about what the scientist, what this data scientist is defined, and we can go at length. Can this be seen? Can they be heard? And what's their value? So that's what essentially I will take you to a couple of the steps that what does it take? Sometimes you have to step it back, and you have to go back to somewhere into a village where farming is being done, and you wanted to see that exactly what you are preparing your food. Maybe you have to make a trip to Bangalore, Indonesia, or Kuala Lumpur, or some places in China, that there is a little place that where your iPhone makers are making your iPhones a dream possible, but you don't care as a marketeer because it gives you an end ROI. So what does happens with the data scientists? And I think it's essentially, you know what, this is the part that I never scripted, but let's forget about the slides. I can flip it and you will know, and it's a cliche. And we always know that what a data scientist will bring to the table. But the fact remains is that from a marketeer to understand the value of data science and how you use what you use and how you change, what is your landscape, you need those brightest minds and the people, and you need to nurture them. It's no longer is the era when I was talking to Mike Sherman, is that when the derivatives came in, the over-the-counter swaps came in, believe me or not, all the physicists that worked for 20 years built those things, but who sold it? And it was sold big times, but it created a problem. So I think all the data creativity presentations, as well as all the data ventures, they never spoke about data science. They just all skipped that part. And they put a little box called machine learning. What is machine learning? How did machine learn? Oh, that's an AI. When AI started, 1940s, 50s, we now know imitation game and theory of everything as a movie. Is that being recalibrating? Is it becoming a sexy job? Whatever it is, it's need to be redefined into the realities of the marketeers, because you don't want it to make the same mistakes about derivatives. That is entirely physics and random walks and all the fantastic stuff ever happened. Credit default swaps, over-the-counters, exchanges. People made money, but marketeers are for people. It's for your product. And it's for your understanding about changing behaviors, how attitudes head. And I think we have had great sessions, particularly these sessions on data was actually paramount. And we had a simple question, when is a man is a man? And so I move to the next slide. So this is in 1993, the dawn of internet, Gopher, if you remember anyone from the University of Wisconsin, that was our internet. We are downloading pirated softwares, but it catapulted. This is what happened. Just read carefully, and this is a very smart comment. So it says, remember when on the internet nobody knew you were a dog? But here is what Mike Sherman suggested, and it's pretty obvious, and I think we needed to translate. It is the same one with the colorful, and on the right-hand side, it's the right-hand side? Yeah, on the right-hand side, they figured it out. NSA has figured it out. How did NSA figure it out? Okay, who did figure it out? So, but he also suggested that I give you some value. So I'll give you 2 quick slides that what usually is being happening in terms of getting your apples and oranges on your store where you can touch and buy the best and the freshest. And you figured it out, the supply chain. I don't care where it's coming from, is Mexico or Argentina. Because I figured it out how it is going to be on your shelf, and it will be fresh, even if it's 30 days old. But it's your audiences, how you feel, how you touch. And it's a gigantic machines in between where every bit of information is in the walls and creates a proprietary audiences. It's sexy, it's machine learning, it's data science, but on top of it, your entire industry is focusing on getting all those things into the right place. What does it do? It gives you the tremendous amount of value in terms of your businesses. Tremendous. So I'm not going to read these things. It's these things that if you ever install anything that does audience into a data science, it's going to give you the value. But here is how I'm going to prove what is the value of the farmer. So very quickly, you'll find it out. Who is your male? You have no identity nowhere. You have all this data, forget about CRMs and everything identifiable. But you know that they play golf, eat steaks, and buy expensive clothes. Oh my God, now I have a chance of 80%, 90%, and if I combine all this through, I know it's a 97% man. But how many people actually play golf, eat steaks, and buy expensive clothes? Only 5% of the fashionable men who earn more than $400,000 can do that. How many people are there? No, not many. So what you have to do, you have to build a known profile. It's called your seed data. It's a sexy term called seed data. It's almost like the branded, genetically coded apple that produce fantastic apples. Yes. Oh, that's why I say that I didn't word hard. I'm sorry about that. Okay, now is this okay? Good, I'm being heard and seen. So that's what you do in terms of machine learning. But what happens is that if you really needed to reach all men, you need thousands and thousands of features to determine the man, and that's why you needed to rank and you produce. But it doesn't stop there. What happens is that you have an inventory problem that does billions and billions of contents. You need to reach 100 million mail, and you have a problem of delivering because you needed to make a right decisions because every man at this point is competing for 3,000 advertisement. Believe me or not, raise your hand. Who is winning? So that's what you have to do, and you have to our audiences. No matter how your marketers are optimizing, you have to reach your GRPs, you have to target OCRs, and you optimize. So in terms, what we have? Machine learning, that she was talking about, you needed to have your people, that your farmers, know how to till, find the weather, what is the right kind of seeds you need to put. You need to have a big data platform. This is no small feat, really. Sorry to say that it's no small feat, in no amount of RDMS, no amount of small investments. But we have clouds and we have big things. We have Hadoops and we have distributed and verticals of the world. But you also need investor. You needed to have your marketer believe that this is going to deliver. And how this is going to deliver? It's going to deliver because it does increase reach, it does reduce cost, and then, by the way, you find all the men in the world. Anyway, I just clicked too fast. But I hope that makes sense. Thank you.
Nope. Mikko, you're not next. Mikko, you're not next. You're not next.
Oh, I'm next.
You're next. Nope, you're next.
Okay.
And of course, he had the best introduction of anyone over the course of these days because you've all seen his LinkedIn profile and got to study it in depth.
Yes, thank you, Mike. And of all my crazy career choices, I didn't think modeling was going to be one of those. So I have to thank Christina for that. And yes, that's going up on my LinkedIn profile, model. So my part of the panel was to talk about the future of data science. And I started thinking about it, and just to give you some more context, I was the chief data officer at MassMutual, where I started my career doing protein interaction modeling and in the weeds of data, and then by the time I was at MassMutual, I was reporting into the EVP of the business there, meaning that I had a say within the decision making, and I sort of had that fortune there. But as I was doing that, I realized some of the things, and hopefully what my talk is about, the future of data science, based on the experiences that I've gained all through what I've done. When I was thinking about putting together what the future of data science is, I decided, it's not really about, we all know what data can do, and I don't want to be bold enough to predict what this world is going to be, and how we're going to be sitting in our houses and everything's going to happen for us, and I don't think I can really predict that. But the question becomes, how do we actually survive this data economy? Because to be perfectly honest, the future of data science is going to depend on us, business executives, getting out of our own ways. Once we get out of our own way, that's the only time we're going to be able to realize the future of data science. So I always like to start with this quote from Michael Schage at the MIT Center of Digital Business. But he had this article in Harvard Business Review, and that seems to be a popular reference today. But what he said essentially was that companies with mediocre outcomes are using big data and analytics for decision support. But really successful companies are using that to affect and support behavior change. Now think about that, right? Because what data science is giving us, or what big data or the data economy is telling us, is that yes, all of these things will happen, but for those things to happen, we need to change our behavior enough where we let those things happen to us. So let's start. What are the kinds of transformations then do we need to think about as a business to survive and flourish in this? One, data tools and services. So we have to all start thinking about data first mentality, right? Everything is about the data, because once we have the data, right, we now can start flourishing in this business. Without data, we can make a lot of calls, and it's all of those are opinions. And so it's about having the kinds of tools and services, and that would support that kind of a mentality. So we move away from judgment to sort of more of data-based decisions. But to do that, everyone needs to feel the stake in that data, all the way from top to bottom, right? Everyone should think about it as, this is my data, and this is how I want to use it. We have to not misuse it, or you have to be together in deciding that. For a corporation, in terms of the big bet moves, we have to think about data-driven experimentation, right? And fortunately, that's what we can do now, which is rather than sitting there and thinking through a 3-month process of what the next strategic move is going to be, we can quickly iterate based on the data that we collect. What kinds of consumers is this new product going to be useful in? I can maybe perhaps run a campaign, design a product, put it out there, but do this fast iteration. And the data economy allows me to do that and evolve based on that. And you have to think about data as culturally neutral, meaning that we need to be nimble with a very, very key sense of market focus, because otherwise it's very easy to get thrown off. So thinking about this transformation, and there's been a lot of discussion in terms of about should it be a top-down or a bottoms-up approach. And honestly, with all the research that's gone in, really, neither of those two approaches work. They only have about 30% success rate, right? So think top-down approach is where decision gets made by the management and the whole company follows. Bottoms-up approach is where sort of you're sort of moving the decision bottoms up. A real approach, and the way I like to talk about it, is applying sort of the social network mentality to creating these kinds of strategies within the organization. Management know about the big business issues, the problems that we are facing, but the data scientists sitting there in the weeds are seeing the trends, seeing the patterns, and it's a discussion between the two. Within this data economy, I mean, one aspect of it is sort of all the food and all the free food that gets that companies offer, and all the sorts of various occasions where they ask you to come together. But the whole point of that is essentially to have this kind of a social network approach towards decision making, because management alone cannot make them, neither can data scientists by themselves. And this approach has shown that it's going to be successful 79% of the times based on a McKinsey study. I love McKinsey, by the way. I mean, any question you have, there's always a McKinsey study for that. So how does that work, right? And it's the way I like to think about it, and this is in the context of an organization, is creating a social computer and using that to transform in the world of the data economy, right? So if you look at that chart on the right there, you see your business is currently effective within a certain area. And as I like to say, all competitive advantage is extremely temporary, right? This is a fast-moving world. Within that, you're always going to have pressures from vendors. So vendor pricing pressures that are going to push your business in one direction. You have competitive advantage, and your competitors are coming from another direction. And in all of this, there is this small area where there's a space that you can grow. And it's really in that sort of a space that I think that needs to emerge, and that's when the company gets to be successful. But I don't think just management by themselves or data scientists by themselves can figure this out. It has to be a social computer. It's the discussion, it's the continuous iteration, it's the constant experimentation that really helps you get to that phase. So I'm going to skip, a generalized view of how the data economy works or how the kind of framework you need to have. But I'm going to spend the last minute just talking about a really quick case study, right? And this actually emerged out of one of my data scientists when I was at MassMutual, he was having coffee with one of the sales guys, and he was like, shit, I have a target of 5 million this year, and I have this new product, and this product is about finding insurance for business partners, and I'm just not able to do anything about it. It's not going off the shelf, and I'm going to be in big trouble. And this guy said, well, I have data, I can help you do that, right? So now that's the conversation that emerged at that level. But once this happened, it was a difficult audience that we were going to target. And once the solution emerged, it needed a lot of selling. And trust me, this is what I used to sell it to my boss in terms of why we needed to do this. This was published in New York Times, and I'm sure some folks must have seen it. But this was the following for American baseball teams at a zip code level that they got just from publicly available Facebook data. So, if this is the figure I use, basically, this is the visualization I use, and I said, look, if this is what they can do just from publicly available data for sports teams, I can definitely use that for putting together all news articles. And so we created this new product where what we did was we put together a news feed through all these multiple sources to find local places where we heard sad news about either business partners expiring or things like that, and got our sales team to put together sort of educational pieces there so that people come talk. And as a result of that, within the first year, that product got about 8 million in revenues when the target was 5. But that's how data science can really help you and transform you within the organization.
Thank you. Okay, last but not least, go ahead, boss. So Mikko has a provocative perspective. It's so provocative, he didn't want anyone to see it beforehand. So he's part data scientist and part mad scientist, I think. So with that, Mikko, go ahead.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, actually, I'm probably more mad scientist than data scientist. No, just kidding. Yes, thank you. The clock is wrong. 1 more minute. Nice try, though. Excuse me? Can you put it to 7 minutes, please? No. Can you put it? Yeah. Okay. Very good. Muchas gracias. Okay. Thank you very much for coming.
Worried because I told him I'd cut him off exactly at 7 minutes.
Okay, Mike, don't take my time. Thank you very much for the Data Science Board, and especially thanks for the distillery team, especially for Claudia, who is not here, for Krasimir from NetYear, for Kajal from Xaxis, and for everybody whose name I'm not mentioning and who was active in the calls. But those 3 people, or those 3 entities that were mentioned, without them, none of this would have been possible. I actually did very little. I just have not so nice voice, but I think I'm good with selecting words. Please go to that URL if you want to see the output that we had from the work. And now let's go. What is this talk about? Well, thank you, Mike. I'm going to do what you asked. I'm going to tell first. I'm going to tell that alchemy is possible. I'm going to tell that it's a binary world and all problems are solvable. Maybe not every single one of them, but to the extent that we can say all. And yet, hey. Man-computer symbiosis, which is actually the key to these topics, because that's what data science is. Okay, we start from alchemy. For thousands of years, people, very smart people, have wanted to create gold, including Isaac Newton and many others. Actually, today, we are able to create gold in the Large Hadron Collider. Yes, that is a true story. We can produce gold atoms. And that is all due to data science, by the way. So what's happening? We're moving from luck-based to skill-based approach. The history of numbers started from marketplaces in Sumeria, roughly 5,000 years ago with the base 60 system. It's not very good system. And we move, okay, I'm gonna take at least 60 seconds extra time at the end. Okay, that's a Chinese, the first known decimal number system recorded is a multiplication table. And now we get to the number system that I really like, which is binary system. And I'll explain why I really like it throughout this talk. And that is actually a manuscript that our dear friend Leibniz used as a base for his binary theorem. So actually, where he's getting it from is getting it from the Chinese. And also Niels Bohr, the father of quantum mechanics, chose yin-yang sign in his coat of arms for the Physics Hall of Fame. And in his deathbed, he actually quoted the Buddha. And here is who they all are really copying. Huangdi, the Yellow Emperor, the father of Chinese culture. Really, we all, the computer scientists of the world and the data scientists of the world, this is our grandmaster. So what's really happening is that we're moving from practical to philosophical. And that's exactly where we started from. This here is more or less the father of modern statistics, at least the regression modeling, and also a fun idea called eugenics. He actually coined it. Here, I'm sure everybody knows him, so we're going through a few villains, and then we'll look at heroes. So for those who don't know, Donald Rumsfeld kicked his career off as a data scientist, counting how bombs drop, and helped America win the war. And then my personal idol, now we move to the heroes, Hans Rosling, whose motto is "the seemingly impossible is possible." And here we see he ended his TED Talk, "The best stats you've ever seen," by swallowing a 70-centimeter sword. So what's happening here, moving from villains to heroes, is that we're moving from just using data science for solving zero-sum games like missiles or to actually solving good problems and saving the world. Yeah. Now, this is my personal hero from the modern times. That's actually the only person that, to any extent, I can admit that I tiny wee bit idolize. This is J.C.R. Licklider. He is the father of internet and everything we do today. Yes, Lauren, you with the laptop there, everything you're doing is invented by JCR Licklider in his legendary paper, Man-Computer Symbiosis, which led 6 years later in 1968 to another man, Engelbert, to do his mother of all demos, where yes, indeed, he introduced all these different things we are doing now. Video conferencing, mouses, networking, yeah, pulling data into your machine from another machine and then manipulating with the power of other machines. So talking about power of machines, Moore's law, which has been guiding linearly the exponential growth of computing power, is coming to an end. And why it's coming to an end is because currently the gate of the transistor, and this is a wee bit technical detail, but I'll share it anyways, 50 silicon atoms wide. So we're roughly 10 years away when it's going to be 1 silicon atom wide, and obviously we can't do anything mechanical like that. So the vault that Engelbert and JCR Lick, he was called Lick envisioned, that vault is now coming to an end. And we don't frankly know what's going to happen next. And really, this wall, this atomic wall I'm talking about, that's not just in the Hadron Collider, that's in each of our pockets. And nobody took the time to vision how that world will look like post Moore's law. So we are moving from common sense to the incredible. So what is data science? Data science is turning elements into gold. It's translating the binary world. It's solving any problem. And finally, it's the man plus computer symbiosis. Mike, that's 5 minutes and 30 seconds.
Okay. Very good. Okay, so now we have chance for a bit of Q&A. Anybody in the audience want to start with a question? In the meantime, can we put up the one additional chart I had? Any questions out in the audience? I can't see you very well. No. Okay. Can I have the additional chart? There we go. Okay. So many of you may know this chart from Gartner. It's their hype curve. And they say that all new technologies move, or most, but I think they actually say all, move across this, which is a lot of hype up front. Then it crashes, expectations aren't met, and then slowly but surely it rebuilds and there's actually some impact. And I don't know how well you can see, but the red square there, or red rectangle, is big data. So they're saying it's just about to peak. And this was about 6 months ago, so they probably would say it's at the peak or just over the peak, and therefore about to crash. So the question for the panel is, do you agree with this, which is big data overhyped, and are we about to see reality come crashing in? Or is big data going to defy the hype curve? Anybody want to start?
All right, I'll start. So I have a certain feeling that I feel about all Gartner reports, and whenever I say something that sounds similar to Bucket, if you would have heard any of the Obama's White Correspondents' Dinner, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But here's the point, right, which is in something that I always like to believe, which is it's not about the data. It's about the value that we are getting from the data. And it's not about the algorithms. It's none of that. It's about the problems that we are solving. And right now, the only limitation that really exists in us solving the problems is us. We are in the way of data and data being able to solve those problems. So if we successfully get out of the way, great. I don't think we'll see that. If we get in the way, who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think that's really, really well said, and that's kind of, JCR Licklider's vision as well, is that we would learn to, work in a very symbiotic way with the computer, and I think some of this crowd is already very much symbiotic with their devices, so really, what we need to do now is we need to get out of the way. We need to let the machine do its job, which we've never really allowed ourselves to embrace the potential of the machine in supporting us to solve our problems, including the hardest problems in this world, extreme poverty, these types of things.
Any questions in the audience? If not, I'm going to build on a last thought, which is to get out of the way, because we are between you and the coffee break. So with that, I'd like to thank our 4 panelists, and enjoy your coffee.